Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Ravelry, Plurk, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is Monday, the 16th of December, 2013. This is episode 57. It's beginning to smell a lot like Christmas. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. My week was pretty much the same as normal. Children and playing and some cold and snow, and out of the ordinary, my mom surprise visited on Saturday. She went down to Florida for a vacation. She and her boyfriend do it pretty much every year for a week, and they purchased a car for her. So they ended up driving back instead of flying. And on the way, they stopped for an overnight. My mom was going to make it a complete surprise, but then on Thursday, she was like, well, what if they have plans on Saturday? We're not that far from the freeway, probably 15 minutes if traffic is good. But that would add an extra half hour onto their drive if they stopped and we weren't here, which when you're already driving, I think they drove a 7-hour stretch of their ride from wherever they were to here. Half an hour to stop for no reason before doing the last 6 hours home would be kind of silly. They stopped by. It was great. It was fun. We didn't have plans on Saturday. They left early Sunday morning. It was nice to see my mom because we hadn't planned on seeing my mom this year. We're not going up. My sister's coming down. We trade off years. 6 hours is a long drive with kids. It's less than that slightly, but you have to stop for potty breaks with kids. So anyway, sweater knit along still going on November 1st through December 31st. The tag is BPH sweater. It can be something that you started ever ago. It could be something that you crank out in the next 15 days. It's possible. I made my sweater in 15 days. You could do it. You can make a child's sweater. I've heard of people doing that in like 2 days. Let's jump into finished objects. The first one traveled back to Michigan because it was Brian's Christmas present. Brian is my mom's boyfriend. I had made him some socks, but then I tried them on and his feet and my feet are the same size. He's 5'2", so he's a small guy, and I have big feet. I tried them on and they were a little bit too tight and just a smidge too short. They were top down. I could have ripped out the toe, but then I tried them on Tuesday and I was like, well, whatever, I'll worry about it later. I decided not to rip out the toe because it wouldn't just be the toe, it would be back to they're colorwork socks that I made as a test knit, which you haven't seen because the pattern hasn't been released because it's for I don't know, something that's happening next year. So you will see pictures eventually. I would have to rip back past the toe to the foot to where you do the setup and stuff, and it was like, no. And then my mom contacted me on Thursday and I was like, what would Brian like for Christmas? Because I could knock out a pair of socks in 2 days if I had to. And not just shorty socks. I could make, actual long-ish socks if I had to. And she said my least favorite project, scarves. She said he would like a scarf. So I was looking around. I was going to knit one because I haven't really given knitting a scarf a chance, but I don't like crocheting them even. So I probably wouldn't enjoy knitting a scarf. I took a poll on Plurk and I almost went with one of their suggestions, and then I was like, you know what? I could just knock out the scarf in like an hour if I took a size N crochet hook and held 3 strands together and crocheted holding a scarf. So that's what I did. Of Red Heart Super Saver in red together, and then 3 strands of Caron 1 pound black together, and I crocheted the length that I wanted, which was a little over my wingspan. And then I just went to town, crochet one row in one color, crochet back the other way in the other color. I crocheted in the back loops across, so it's kind of reversible. I think you could tell in the picture where one side is more red and one side is more black. When he opened it, he was like, "This is great. This will go perfectly with my Red Wings jacket," which is obviously what I was going for. They're both really big fans of the Red Wings. And my mom's Christmas present, I gave them their Christmas presents when they got here, and then they were like, "Oh, well, we didn't bring yours, so we'll just open them later." And I was like, okay. And then my mom was talking Sunday morning about how cold it was, and they're both smokers. We are a non-smoking family, so they had to go outside to smoke. And when she came back in, she didn't take any gloves with her to Florida because they had a cold front come through in Florida, and it was 76. So you get the idea. So she came in from smoking her first cigarette of the morning, and she was like, "Oh, it's so cold," and rubbing her hands because she didn't have any gloves. And I was like, "Open your Christmas present." And she opened them, and she tried on the arm warmers, and she was like, fingerless mitts, whatever you want to call them. She was like, "Oh, these are perfect. They'll be great for driving and holding the steering wheel." And I was like, "Yeah, that's why I had you open it right now." I also finished that test knit that I was working on, and it looks like this. So my leftovers are pretty small. They're like this big of each skein. I used the Solar Flare fibers in the sea glass colorway. That was the lighter greeny color. And then Science Monkey Mercantile Faraday sock, not in the Texecuted colorway as this says. It's in the Chattaboogie colorway. That's the gray and black. Hopefully I'll be showing this to you soon. Just waiting on pattern release to show you the whole thing. But I finished that. Worked on, I don't remember what size needles. I wasn't even going to show you, but then I saw it on my desk and I was like, "Oh, it's so pretty." I'm going to guess it was size 8. I don't remember the millimeters for that. I finished the Strider socks, which are made using Daisy Knits, the Shoot Base, Wicked Cool. These are the socks for the Podiversary sock winner. I used the Strider sock, which is a pattern from Fellowship of the Socks by Claire Ellen. Got lovely cable down the back and texture down the front. I really, really, really like this yarn, the Shoot Base. It has bamboo in it. I think it would make a really pretty shawl, but I don't wear a lot of shawls, so, you know. But I think it also has really great stitch definition in these socks. And I hope to get those out in the mail before Christmas. I think I'm going to do a mail run before Christmas. No guarantees. So Julie, that might be an after Christmas thing. We'll see. I went on Friday to mail out packages, and I got there 5 minutes before they opened, got out of my vehicle, went and stood by the doors. 2 seconds later, another woman came walking up to the door, and she had 4 or 5 packages, so I held the door open for her. And then by the time the door opened, on time, like on the dot, they were on time, there were at least 6 people in line, maybe more than that. So it's getting closer to the holidays. I'm a little bit about going to the post office. I'll try though. I also finished something that you didn't even see last week because I started it Monday night. I made socks for my niece. I can't remember if I told you that she called me very upset because the socks that I made her last Christmas, which we actually celebrated in January, didn't fit her anymore. Because She's 5 now, and children grow a lot during the year. So I made her these socks. She is super into unicorns, and I think these are very much unicorn colors. I think that's better color-wise. The pink toes and at the cuffs is Fiber Nymph Bedazzled, I believe. It was a leftover that someone sent me, and I used some of it in my blanket, and then I used some in Mara's socks, and now in Cecilia's socks. And then the purple pink variegated that's doing kind of a spirally stripey thing is from 716 Knit. It's the 716 sock in Poo Poo, Southern California Poo Poo, which you'll be seeing again this color because obviously these little socks didn't take up that much yarn. I have this much left. I'm going to make a pair of socks for my sister, probably not before Christmas, with that color, and I am considering using sparkly purple for the toes, heels, and cuffs, but I haven't talked to her about it yet, so we will discuss that. And now I've decided that I'm going to make all of the children Christmas socks. I already have socks for Gabriel and Mara, and now Cecilia, which means I just need to make socks for Kenny and Robert. What am I thinking? Plus, I might do a pair for Amanda if I have time, because then Steve has Christmas socks and Becca has Christmas socks. So Amanda and I will be the only two without Christmas socks, so I should probably make her some Christmas socks if I have time. I don't know though, it's closing in. It's, I think it's 11 days until she gets here. We're celebrating Christmas after Christmas because she has to work on Christmas Day, and then the day after she has to celebrate with my mom. So sometime after that, she'll be here. We'll do the celebrating thing. I could knock out 3 pairs of socks that I haven't even started yet by then, right? Just tell me I'm crazy. I'm sure I am. That's all the things I finished, says my notebook. I'm going to trust it. I have no concept of time right now. It's a really busy time of the year, so I have to trust that my notebook knows what it's talking about. I started a project that I had talked about wanting to do using the, I didn't even write it down, using the beaded something necklace maybe from Knitting Vintage, that book that I was talking about. I showed you the pattern in the book, but I said I wanted to do it not as a necklace, but as a garland. So I have started. The garland is this green chain is either 4 or 5 times my wingspan. I can't remember. And this right here, this pink bead, is on the very center of the strand. Because I was thinking about it, and I almost, I'm attaching them by you slide them on and then you sew them down. Or maybe you don't sew them down, but I am sewing them to the actual cord. And I was thinking about sliding it on, and I almost stopped when it was at the end, but then I was like, that's silly, because every bead is just going to have to slide so far until I get close to the other end. But if I start with the bead in the middle, that means that no bead has to slide all the way to almost the end. I'm using scrappy bits for the beads, or leftover bits. This is some Lion Brand cotton that I used to make scrubbies last August. Not this year, but before I started podcasting. This bead is a whole bunch of little scraps, like 6-inch lengths of worsted weight that I had sitting around. This is scraps of sock yarn held double from the pink socks that I made Cecilia last year for Christmas. I told you that Lenny, the dog, chewed through the sock. Well, instead of throwing out those little scrappy bits, I just put them with the piece that had been like chewed off that I removed to replace the top cuff, the ribbing on the cuff. I put in my area with the sock yarn scraps from my blanket because I could always magic knot them together. But instead I used them on this bead. And this is also leftover scrappy bits of worsted weight acrylic. So I'll just be working on that whenever I feel like I need just something really small and instant gratification, because the beads are so fast, ridiculously fast, and then it only takes a couple minutes to finish them off and put them on the cord. So hopefully by next year, Christmas time, that will be useful for decorating our place. I worked on Robert's dog some more. Not a lot, not as much as I probably should have, but you know, a little bit. I now have the collar, 2 arms, a leg, and the tail. And I'm going to work I'm going to try to force myself to work really hard to finish these by this dog by next week so that it's just done. Because I still want to do those socks because I'm a crazy person. That pattern is Sweet Pup Crochet pattern by Terry Crews. I'm using Karen 1 pound in white and a US G6, which is 4.25 millimeter crochet hook. Last week I said I was using a size F. That is incorrect. That is what I was using to pull in ends for a project. I don't even remember what project I was pulling in ends on, but that's what I was using the F for, so it was on my desk and I got confused. The pattern calls for a G, so I used a G. I worked on the Stalagmite socks by Cookie A, which is out of the Knit Sock Love ebook. And I use Miss Babs Yummy hand paint in the colorway Prince. And I'm right here. I'm about 6 rounds away from finishing the leg on this sock. Don't get too excited. I didn't finish the first sock. I got through the gusset and I weighed my yarn and I was like, I don't know, I might be playing yarn chicken, which sometimes I'm okay with and sometimes not. So I decided I would work the second sock to where the first sock was, and now that I have size 1 circulars cleared off, that's mainly why I did these. Well, and also because they're mirrored, but that's mainly why I did them on DPNs instead of on circulars. So now that I have circulars cleared off, I'm going to get this through the gusset and then work them together so that if I have to use a different sock for the toes of, or a different yarn for the toes of the socks, I will be starting from the same point on the sock. I am thinking that the black and gray from the leftover, the little ball, will be enough to finish off the toes of the socks if I need to. And since this yarn is black and gray and blue and purple, I think that'll be a good fix if I need to use that for the toes. Ducky is visiting. Oh yeah, speaking of yarn chicken. So I played yarn chicken with Cecilia's socks, and I had to bind off the second sock 6 stitches with the body color. If she doesn't like them, she can knit her own socks, but I think it'll be fine. She's 5. I'll tell her the unicorns did it on purpose. You guys, I worked on my sock yarn blanket this week. I decided that since I finished some projects and I really, really miss my sock yarn blanket, that I should be allowed to put a few squares on. 1 for each project that I finished. That's fair, right? So here it is. This is a square of Haley yarn. This is the Nooch fiber that I used for Steve's Zipper Lexicons. This is the Solar Flare fibers sea glass that I used in that test knit. And here is the Daisy Knits Wicked Cool that I just used in the Strider. I only have one more color of Haley yarn, which I already know where it's going to go. It's going to go right here where this marker is designating. And then I will be starting with Jerry's yarn. I've decided that when I finish a project, it's okay to make a square on my sock yarn blanket because it's really small, and I haven't been making things for myself since I finished the sweater. I haven't been working on any of the socks for myself. It's fair to work on my sock yarn blanket, yeah? And it's not fair to you, the viewers who enjoy seeing the growth on my sock blanket, to not work on it. So I'm doing this for you. Yeah, I'll keep telling myself that. I got something new this week. I went to knitting yesterday. I do knitting on Sundays at Barnes & Noble. There's a Starbucks cafe that we sit and knit in. I was 40 minutes later than usual because we were doing errands, and then Steve wanted lunch, and there was 20 minutes before knitting started, and he was like, "It's fine, we'll go somewhere quick." And then he decided we would go to Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't know why he thinks that that's quick. It's never quick. We get there, our drinks got to the table right away. We were sitting waiting for the food for, 20 minutes. The kids were getting antsy, then we ate, and by the time everything was said and done, it had been 50 minutes since we went in, which isn't very long. But it was long enough to make me a little bit late for knitting, and we could have gone somewhere else and eaten more quickly without the kids getting antsy. So I walked in, and I don't know if I have told you about Joyce, but I think that maybe I have. She's the lady who just started knitting about 2 months ago. She took a knitting class. She saw us knitting the next Sunday, and she was like, "Oh, I'm learning how to knit." And we were like, "Well, come and sit with us. We're here every Sunday." And then she did. She started coming. And we've been gently guiding her. She is a crocheter, and she does needlepoint. So she's got fiberiness, but knitting is really intimidating to her. Although she did start a shawl, which was great. I walked in, and she was handing Claire, who is the younger girl who's there, she's a college student, was handing Claire a bag. And I set down my stuff. There was no line at the Starbucks counter, which hardly ever happens. It happens like 3 times in the whole 3 hours that we're there. So I set down my stuff, grabbed my cup, I bring my own mug, and got my chai, and then came back to the table, and she handed me a bag. And she said that she wanted to make us all gifts because if we weren't there to help her along and show her how to fix her mistakes instead of ripping out her entire piece of knitting, which is what she did the first time she made a mistake in her knitting. She was like a foot into a scarf and dropped a stitch or something that would be easy to fix if you knew what you were doing, but to a newbie is like, and so she ripped it all back. Well, I taught her how to fix dropped stitches with a crochet hook. She dropped a stitch, I showed her how to do it, and then I dropped a stitch in my work and handed it to her and told her she had to fix it, otherwise my work was going to have a hole in it, because I didn't want to traumatize her by causing a mistake intentionally in her knitting, and I was just knitting on some stockinette. No, I was knitting on the seamless Salomas. So there was nothing that she could have messed up that I couldn't have fixed. Anyway, she handed me a bag and said that she really appreciated the patience that I've shown her and helping her learn and pushing her gently to expand her horizons instead of stay in a comfort zone. So she made me this scarf. It's that ruffly yarn, and teal and brown is one of my favorite color combinations. And I'm just never going to knit with this type of yarn. I think the outcome is pretty, but I know that I would not enjoy it. So I would never make this scarf for myself. Not saying that, oh, I'm never going to wear it, but it's not something I would knit for myself. And I really, I really like it. I think the colors are really pretty. And not only that, she's really, really new at knitting. And she's picked up her speed, of course, because now she's more comfortable with it. But this is a day and a half of her life to make me a scarf. Like, that's amazing. So I love it, and it's great. And yeah, she made one for all three of us who are there regularly. We're a pretty small group, but there's four of us who come pretty regularly unless some family stuff comes up or the weather is really, really bad. So that's my new thing. A day and a half of someone's life. Sometimes I wonder if the people who I make things for realize how much time goes into knitting, like the non-knitting people. I'm still reading Devoted by Hilary Duff. I think I'm a third of the way through. Possibly. No, maybe half. I'm about there. So, just about half. It's okay. It's better than I recall the first one being. It's not amazing, but it's also a young adult novel, and sometimes I feel that the genre lends itself to oversimplifying things, which I don't think is absolutely necessary for young adult readers. But what do I know? I was reading B.C. Andrews when I was 7, so can't really say what's age appropriate. Maybe I'll be done by next week. Depends on how much I feel like reading. I'll probably do it a lot since I'm doing the boys' socks the same way that I did everybody else's socks, which is tube socks with some ribbing. So yeah, that'll probably be finished by the end of the week. I started listening to A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. Picked that up at the same time that I picked up Devoted. And I think that's due back soon. I wonder if I can rerun that. We'll see. In the last book, like 4 major characters weren't involved in the story at all. And in this one, I've only listened to the first 3 discs, so I'm not very far in at all. But 2 of those characters have already made their appearance. So hopefully the other 2 will also make their appearance in this book because I missed them in the last book. I'm enjoying this one from the get-go a lot more than I enjoyed the previous one. My list of 3 this week, holiday cookies. I'm going to list 3, but I'm only going to give you the recipes to 2 because one of the recipes is a family recipe for my best friend, and I don't feel comfortable sharing their family recipe. But I'll tell you about it. The first holiday cookies that I like to make, and the reason I'm thinking about this is because we started our holiday baking today. This place is the first place since I was growing up where I've really had like a neighborhood versus I live somewhere and I have neighbors who, aren't really neighborly. This is a neighborly neighborhood. So I want to make Christmas cookies for people. And we started by making a batch of chocolate chip cookies. And I've had this recipe for a very, very long time. The ground oatmeal keeps them moist for forever. And the grated chocolate, I mean, how can you go wrong with that? So you take a Hershey bar and you grate it into the batter. Oh, it's amazing. So we're making those. And I'm also making spritz cookies. I like mine with almond extract. Some people do them with orange or lemon extract. I like mine with almond. It's a little bit different than normal sugar cookies. And we make them really small. And then the last one is the secret family recipe. Caramel apple cookies. They're so good. You know those caramel apple suckers, the green ones with the actual caramel? Yeah, they taste almost exactly like that. They're so amazing. So those are what we're going to hand out to the neighbors. Well, I hope you enjoyed this show, and I hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string. And I will see you next week. Bye.